Good morning, one and all. I am Parthasarathi Mishra doing my PhD under Dr. Soumi Mori. Today, for the International Conference on Built Environment Science and Technology, my topic for presentation is a methodology for evaluation of architectural and aesthetic value of architectural heritage. For the content of my presentation, this is the following sequences. Starting with the introduction in which we are discussing the what is heritage, architectural heritage, and why architectural heritage need to be evaluated. Then literature review, where we are going to discuss the role of international organizations, governmental agencies and individual architectural heritage scholars. Then materials and method, in which methodology for identifying dimensions and parameters, identification of subdimensions and parameters of the architectural and aesthetic value, when subdimensions of architectural and aesthetic value, parameters for architectural and aesthetic value, and finally brief discussion on structural equation model, which is a confirmatory factor analysis, where we proposed a model along with the estimation of architectural and aesthetic value, followed by the conclusion of this presentation. What is heritage? According to Vico in 2010, heritage means the inheritance of items from the ancestors to protect them in the present and give it back to the future generation. Whereas ICOMOS Vietnam describes heritage as tangible and intangible properties. However, Philippines ICOMOS defines heritage as movable and immovable cultural properties. Again, Kapoor in 2010 added some more elements in the definition of heritage, like the culture of any country can be defined as the complex of idea, conception, developed qualities, organized relationships, causes that generally exist in the society and are expressed through various media of languages like arts, music, drama, architecture, carvings, paintings, dance, scientific discoveries, inventions, etc. So many things. Uh, Clary in 2007 defines it as the interrelationship between the environment, people, and place. Therefore, architectural heritage has a particular connection with the architectural, socio-cultural, and environmental aspects of a place. As per Ahmed, the definition of architectural heritage differs from country to country. After World War II, many international organizations were established for the preserving of architectural heritage sites. Example, Council of Europe, UNESCO, ICOM, ICROM, ICOMOS. This international organization's principal objective is to preserve the cultural and natural heritage sites and identify them for conservation. These organizations have developed the scope of architectural heritage, including different aspects of architectural heritage sites. Architectural heritage, or better to say the scope of architectural heritage, is being developed over the last few decades. In its definition of architectural heritage, UNESCO 1972 convention included monuments, group of buildings and sites with cultural and natural importance. Uh, the definition of UNESCO 1919 Bura Charter added the cultural significance of the places. In contrast, the UNESCO 2003 Convention included the living and intangible aspects of the architectural heritage of a place in its scope. Felden's book Conservation of Historic Buildings in 2003 discussed the role and principal elements of international organizations for conserving World Heritage Sites. The definition and scope of the architectural heritage of various organizations differ in their context. To identify any architectural heritage and formal registration and futures of the such heritage, a long-run plan, feasibility analysis, and finding financial sources for such heritage are required. Uh, as per Solonsky, assessment of architectural heritage is required for academic importance, knowledge and preservation matters, local and regional importance, usability, and assigning levels. For all these purposes, a holistic assessment of architectural heritage is necessary. Again, prioritizing conservation works, urban issues, economic supports for protecting and choosing new uses with or without changing its authenticity demands complete assessment of architectural heritage. Many variables and aspects has been established. Initially, the selection of architectural heritage was preliminarily based on their history, architecture, and archaeological values of this architectural heritage. However, later on, criteria of selecting architectural heritage has been changed with their social, cultural, and environmental aspects. Many other studies has been find out they have added so many variables and parameters. Therefore, this presentation focuses on contributing to the existing state of knowledge and discussing the future scope of the work. Table shows the international organizations, their sources, assessment criteria, and assessment subcriteria. Whereas table 2 shows the criteria and subcriteria used by the various governmental agencies. This is continued. Table 3 shows the assessment criteria and subcriteria used by the various cultural heritage scholars. Continue. Now the methodology for identifying dimensions and parameters. After collecting all the criteria, subcriteria from international organizations, government agencies and architectural heritage scholars, this model of hierarchy is made with the three different levels as dimensions, subdimensions and parameters for the value assessment of architectural heritage. By removing the repetitive words, merging similar meaning words or phrases and clubbing of similar area or domain for the parameters and subdimensions, the final list or the hierarchy of the model is established. This is the final hierarchical model for the architectural and aesthetic value for any architectural heritage, where sub 4 subdimensions and 12 parameters can be valued for obtaining the architectural and aesthetic value of any architectural heritage. From the table of criteria and sub-criteria of international organization, government agency and architectural heritage scholars, figure 2 shows the frequencies of the obtained subdimensions. In figure 2, aesthetic value has higher frequency and contextual value has lower frequency. Similarly, for the parameters, for 12 parameters for the architectural and aesthetic value, from the table of criteria and sub-criteria of all these organizations and researchers, figure 3 shows the frequencies of the obtained parameter. In figure 3, form and design has the higher frequency and architectural integrity and landscape values have lower frequency. Now the question arises whether all the ranks of the subdimensions or parameters concerning their frequencies can be judged for their level of importance while accessing the architectural heritage. In other words, higher is the frequency, higher is the weights of the parameter. Is it justifiable? Some of the researchers have used this kind of concept. However, we contradicted their concept with these philosophies. When new parameters are added to the assessment system, then they will automatically get lower importance as compared to the other parameters or subdimensions. Therefore, we are proposing the confirmatory factor analysis or the structural equation modeling for the value assessment of architectural and aesthetic value. For the same, to explain the hierarchy model of the architectural and aesthetic value of any architectural heritage, we have six stages of confirmatory factor analysis or the structural equation modeling. Stage one is the defining the individual construct, which is the subdimension for our case, which can be measured through the parameters already assigned to these parameters. Stage 2 is to develop and specify the measurement model, which I already discussed in the previous slides in our hierarchical model. Stage 3 is to design the study to produce empirical results, for which questionnaires for the parameters, the data collection mode and collection of data can be done with the missing data. Stage 4 consists of validity of the model. If it is not valid, then we have to refine the measures and design a new study. If yes, then proceed further. Stage 5 is to specify the structural model, where conversion of the measurement model to the structural model can be done. Stage 6 is the validity of the structural model with the goodness of fit, finding out the significance level and size of the parameters to be estimated, the validity of the model again. If the model is not valid, then refining the model with the new data can be done, and the entire process can be done again and again. If the model is valid, then estimation of model can be done and conclusions can be drawn out of it through the model. This is our proposed model. Figure 5 shows the proposed model, and the equations are showing the proposed model for obtaining the measurements of the index value of the architectural and aesthetic value of any architectural heritage. Finally, in the conclusion, the summary of the paper in conclusion, the paper's primary focus is to identify and analyze the subdimensions and parameters for the holistic assessment of architectural and aesthetic value for any architectural heritage. The study identifies 4 subdimensions and 12 parameters for the same. The subdimensions identified are aesthetic value, architectural and alteration value, rarity value and contextual value. These subdimensions and parameters are identified by the sources that includes 11 international organizations, 17 government agencies and 22 architectural heritage scholars. The frequency of these parameters or subdimensions of various organizations and individuals may show the relative importance of the assessment scores, dimensions and parameters. However, higher frequency does not necessarily mean higher importance. The distribution of frequency only indicates that this has been covered more widely in the literature. The relative importance has to be decided through the data collection, which can be applied to the suggested structural equation model for obtaining the index value of this particular dimensions. Similarly, for other various dimensions like economic values, social values, historical values, environmental values, subdimensions and parameters can be identified and selected by using methodological framework, which we have already shown. And these are the references that we have used for our research. Thank you. Again, I am Parthasarathi Mishra. My mail ID is parthaconcept@gmail.com. Thank you once again.